Thanks.
Governor John Kasich has served as governor of Ohio since 2011.
Governor, what would you do with the so-called sanctuary cities? In San Francisco, we saw that god-awful murder of that beautiful young mother by an illegal immigrant with a criminal
Well, I think they're going to be eliminated, Jack. I mean, this is a Republican and Democrat agreement there. In terms of immigration, I mean, obviously the border needs to be secured. There needs to be an expanded guest worker program so people can move in and out and support their family, but do it in a legal way. With the 12 million, we need to find out who they are. If they're law-abiding, God-fearing folks, they're going to have to pay a penalty towards legalization, and they'll have to wait. And, you know, I think it's border. It's a reasonable guest worker program. And the ones who are the 12 million, if they violate the law, they're going to have to be deported or put in prison. And I think at the same time, we clearly need to make sure that we can protect who gets in and out of this country. And once we put something into effect like that, anybody who comes in has got to be sent home. No one should be confused about it.
Are you a fan of NAFTA? Has it been a net gain for the U.S.?
You know, my problem with NAFTA is real simple, and that is if the American worker doesn't get protected, and here's what I mean by that. I have a friend that runs a steel company. He says that these foreign countries are dumping product in this country, destroying people's jobs. It takes us like 2 years to find out if they're cheating. You can't wait 2 years. Somebody's family's being destroyed, their jobs are being destroyed, it's pulling down communities. So, Jack, we need an expedited process. I'm basically a free trader, but I'm a fair trader. And if it makes sense, we'll go forward with it, but we've got to make sure that we have a mechanism in place to make sure that when people cheat, that we call them on it and we take action. You asked a question about the economy. If I could just speak on that for a second. You know, I was chairman of the Budget Committee when we balanced the federal budget. I was one of the chief architects, and our economy took off. You remember that in the late 90s and in the early 2000s, we were growing. Why? We cut taxes, we balanced budgets, it made sense. I became governor of Ohio. We were $8 billion in the hole, we cut taxes, we balanced budgets, we're now $2 billion in the black, we're up 350,000 jobs. Cutting taxes, balancing budgets is what works to drive economic growth.
Your answer on your own there got to a question that Tim in Hollis, New Hampshire's asked, and that is balancing the budget. To paraphrase his question, he and his wife have to live with a budget in the household. And they don't understand why Washington is the antithesis and doesn't live with a budget. What faith can you give to them that if you're elected president, the budget was balanced once before, but now it hasn't happened? How is Washington going to live with the same fiscal discipline that households here in New Hampshire and apartments and condominiums have to live with every week between groceries and heating and kids and budget and mortgage? How do we get Washington to live within its means?
Well, Jack, first of all, we need a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, which I have been pushing since I was a very young man and been traveling the country trying to get that done, number one. Number two, look, it's about record and accomplishment. I was there. I spent 10 years of my life balancing the budget, not because of numbers, but because of values. Just the values, when people have to balance their budgets, so should the government. And in addition to that, we don't have the right to live high on the hog and put the bills on our children. That is immoral. So I spent 10 years working at it. Frankly, we got it balanced with Senator Domenici and the Clinton administration. We got it done, and we can do it. We can do it again. It is politically challenging, but frankly, the effort to get there is not that complicated. I've written only about 16 budgets in my lifetime, including the one that took Ohio from $8 billion in the hole to $2 billion in the black. These things can be done, but they don't necessarily have to be done by killing programs or chopping programs. You make them work better. So that couple, I'm President of the United States. My #1 priority is to get us on a roadmap to a balanced federal budget to create jobs in America.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Senator Lindsey Graham was elected to the U.S. House in 1994 and has served as a U.S. Senator since 2002.
Senator, good evening. How do we maintain free trade that is fair trade? And what nations specifically are cheating us?
Well, China is cheating. They manipulate their currency to create a discount for products made in China, and we don't do a damn thing about it. They're building islands over resource-rich territory owned by others because they can. They cyber attack us, steal our intellectual property, and nobody pushes back. If I'm president, we're going to push back against China. Here's my foreign policy, my trade policy. A clenched fist and an open hand. You choose.
Speaking of China, certain nations have been accused of stealing and breaking into our databases in the government and business. if it's President Graham and you catch a country doing that, how can we stop it and what do you do?
Well, one, you hit back. You make them pay a price. Most people do things they can get away with until it costs too much. In China, China cheats, they steal, but it's just not China. We've been walked all over. I'm tired of it. I want a clenched fist and an open hand. To Mr. Putin, if I'm President of the United States, you're going to have a different person to deal with. Why is he in the Ukraine today? Because when Obama drew a red line against Assad and didn't do anything about it, China thought, hey, this is a weak guy, let's grab all we can grab. In the Ukraine, he took what he wanted. The Iranians, they don't think that Obama's going to use military force at all. And how could you get John Kerry away from the negotiating table with a crowbar? So at the end of the day, our foreign policy is failing. We're not respected around the world. There are more terrorist organizations with more capability to strike our homeland than any time since 9/11. And to radical Islam, here's my policy. Whatever it takes, as long as it takes to defeat you.
You mentioned Vladimir Putin in the Ukraine. Should we be arming troops?
We should do four things. Arm the Ukrainians so they can fight for their own freedom. We signed an agreement with the Ukraine in the 90s. If you'll give up your 2,400 nuclear weapons, excuse me, we'll guarantee your sovereignty. Who would do that in the future? Arm the Ukrainians so they can fight for their freedom. Take every bit of natural gas we can find in America in an environmentally sound way that we don't use and export it to Europe and undercut Putin's monopoly. Rebuild NATO after we rebuild our own military. Everybody talks about balancing the budget and spending money. We're on the road to becoming Greece. If you don't do what Judge Gregg says and fix the debt, reform Medicare and Social Security, all the money is going to go to pay those bills. When I was 21, my mom died. When I was 22, my dad died. We lived in the back of a liquor store. I'm 60 years old. Somebody in this country needs to do what Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill did. Get us together. You know, I could give up some Social Security benefits today because I'm going to have a military retirement, a congressional retirement, a 401k plan. I would take less knowing that people need it more than I do. When I was 22, I needed every penny. I want to be president to restore a great nation, to put radical Islam in a box and to get us off the road to Greece. And that means we've got to work together and do the big things, the hard things.
Americans, and here in New Hampshire, are worried about lone wolf terrorists. We're worried about ISIS. We're worried about ISIS.
Yeah.
But the war tomorrow may already be here today. We have 500 satellites out there in space that control ATMs, GPS. If someone took out one of those satellites and caused chaos here in a city of the heartland, as President Graham, would you respond? Is that an act of war or not?
I would respond. To me, that'd be an act of war. Here's the problem. As the threats to this country grow, we're disarming ourselves. I've never seen more threats, particularly in the cyber arena. So what is our response? To cut the military budget, to have the smallest army since 1940, the smallest Navy since 1915, to neuter the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA at a time we need them the most. The only way we're going to prevent an attack on this country is hit them before they come here. And as to Hillary Clinton, the last person in the world you want to send into the arena with the Russians is Hillary Clinton. As to the Clintons, I've been dealing with this crowd for 20 years. I'm fluent in Clinton speak. You want me to translate, Jack? When he says, Bill says, I didn't have sex with that woman, he did. When she says, I'll tell you about building the pipeline when I get to be president, means she won't. And when she tells us, trust me, you've got all the emails that you need, we haven't even scratched the surface. So I understand this crowd, and I can beat them, and if we can't beat them, it doesn't matter.
Thank you, Senator.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As many of you know, we have hosted a series of events called Politics and Eggs. Many of the folks behind me have had an opportunity to meet our students and members of the community during those events. Those are opportunities for them to tell us their vision for the future and for us to ask questions. So tonight, we have an opportunity with everyone here to do the same. But it'll be moderated. We will have an opportunity to hear the presentations. The format, as will be described, will allow them a chance to talk about their platform, but then they'll have an opportunity to come up again and give us a little bit more information and perhaps clarify some things that were said. So it's an interesting format. It's a forum. It's not a debate. We are very, very blessed to have everyone here tonight. We know it's a very busy week, and it may be a prelude to other things later in the week, but we know that this is important because as the first in the nation primary state, as Governor Sununu used to say, in Iowa they pick corn, in New Hampshire we pick presidents, this is an opportunity for our voters to hear from the candidates. And so we are just about ready to go live. When the cameras roll, we will be on C-SPAN and broadcast on many other networks, so we do ask that everyone please be quiet during the presentations and keep their cell phones off. So, with no further ado, I leave you the candidates. Thank you.
Good evening from the Dana Center on the campus of beautiful St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire, and welcome to the 2016 Voters First Republican Presidential Forum. Tonight's forum is co-sponsored by the New Hampshire Union Leader, the Post and Courier, the Gazette, KCRG-TV, WLTX-TV, iHeartRadio, and our broadcast partner, C-SPAN. We would like to take a moment to thank our local sponsors, No Labels, Americans for Prosperity, Eversource, Eastern Bank, the Live Free or Die Alliance, and of course, our host, St. Anselm College. You will hear from 14 of the Republican candidates for President of the United States this evening. With us tonight are Governor Jeb Bush, Dr. Ben Carson, Governor Chris Christie, Carly Fiorina, Senator Lindsey Graham, Governor Bobby Jindal, Governor John Kasich, Governor George Pataki, Governor Rick Perry, Senator Rick Santorum, and Governor Scott Walker. With us via satellite from Washington, D.C. are Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Rand Paul, and Senator Marco Rubio. Please welcome our moderator for tonight's forum, Jack Heath, host of New Hampshire Today on iHeartRadio.
Good evening and thank you, candidates and audience. The Voters First Forum was the result of news media here in New Hampshire, Iowa, and South Carolina, all with the belief that voters in our 3 states and the rest of America deserve to hear from all of these candidates here tonight at the same time answering their questions. Our time will be tight this evening, and we want to hear from everyone. The order of speakers was drawn just moments ago randomly, and we've asked the candidates to skip their normal intros so we can get right to it. More questions, more answers for you, our voters. Let's meet our first candidate.
Governor Rick Perry served as the 47th governor of the state of Texas from 2000 to 2015.
Governor, thanks so
Howdy.
much. We received thousands of responses from voters in our 3 states and around the country, but our 3 states focusing here tonight. We asked them what was most important to them, the #1 issues facing voters here in New Hampshire, Iowa, and South Carolina. Topping the list, immigration and the economy. Governor, what would your administration's policy be toward illegal immigrants already in the U.S.?
Well, the real issue for us in this country today is what's happening all across our great land, and that is the cost that illegal immigration is having on this state. And until we get that border secure, it's not going to stop. It's like a serious wound. You want to staunch the flow, and that's not what's happening in this country now. For 30 years, we've heard people talk about, well, if we'll deal with this immigration, this illegal immigration issue, if we'll reform it, then we'll secure the border. And now we're in plus 30 years of that. The American people don't trust Washington, D.C. to deal with this issue of immigration reform until we secure the border. and I know a little something about securing the border. As a matter of fact, last summer I looked in the President's eye when he came to Dallas, Texas, and I said, Mr. President, if you don't secure the border, Texas will. And that's exactly what we did. We sent our Department of Public Safety, our Texas Rangers, our Parks and Wildlife Wardens, putting them literally in the river. And we also deployed our Texas National Guard. And because of that effort, we saw a 74% decrease in the number of apprehensions that were occurring in that part of the border. You can secure the border. It takes boots on the ground. It takes the security fencing in the metropolitan areas, and you have aviation assets. And I'm talking about from Tijuana to El Paso to Brownsville, flying 24/7, looking down with the technology to be able to see what's going on and identifying where there's activities that are obviously illegal or suspicious, and fast response team. That's what you have to do. I know how to secure that border. If you elect me President of the United States, I will promise you one thing: the will to secure that border will reside in the Oval Office.
Governor, I want to stick with immigration, as many of our voters are concerned. So much is made of illegal immigration. Until we get a handle on that, should we reduce the number of green cards granted legally each year to folks wanting to get into this country through the legal process? Should we cut down that number, and what should that number be each year?
Well, I think we need to be smart about our immigration, and the agency that we have today can't even keep up with people that come into the country. When you give a visa and they overstay it and we don't know where they are, I mean, Bobby, we know that they can find a package halfway around the world with UPS, and we can't keep up with the people that have overstayed their visas. I mean, for crying out loud, that agency is broken. You need to fix that agency of government that deals with these individuals that are coming in here. Be thoughtful about what is the workforce that we need. Allow the people in this country that we need in this country, and those that have overstayed their visas, you go find them, you pick them up, and you send them back wherever they're from.
But should we reduce the number temporarily of legal?
I don't know whether we need to reduce the number or not until we're able to find out, you know, who these people are that are in the country illegally. That's the real challenge, and if we get that taken care of first, then we can make a smart decision about whether or not we do or we don't need to have more visas being handed out.
George Will recently said on my radio show, the biggest problem facing the next president is an economy with a 2% GDP. If you're elected president, how can you make Washington and this country grow again at something greater than 2%?
Well, it's one of the reasons I'm a little bit more than just a passable expert on that, because the state of Texas created more jobs than anybody in this room over the course of the time that I was the governor. 1/3 of all the jobs that were created in America occurred while I was the governor of the state of Texas. And we did it by having smart policies in place, tax policies that let you keep more of what you work for, a regulatory climate that is fair and predictable, legal system that didn't allow for oversuing, and public school policies that basically were accountable, that said to these businesses, you're going to find a skilled workforce in that state. And the way you do that in America is inextricably intertwined to our energy policy, a North American energy policy. I will suggest to you, Canada, the United States, Mexico has more known resources than of Russia and Saudi Arabia. Drive down the electric cost, put those regulations into place that drive the income tax down, and you can create a renaissance in manufacturing like we never seen.
We have to respect time. Thank you, Governor Perry. Thank you.
Jack, thank you.
Rick Santorum represented the state of Pennsylvania in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1991 to 1995 and the U.S. Senate from 1995 to 2007.
Senator, should the federal government subsidize any economic sector, and if so, which ones?
I don't think we should be subsidizing, but we have to make sure that our economic sectors are competitive. One of the things I announced for president on the factory floor in Western Pennsylvania, talking about if we're going to restore the great center of America, we've got to get Americans back to work who haven't been working, haven't been rising. You saw just this past quarter, 0.2% wage growth. And if you look at where the wage growth is really stagnated, it's the 74% of Americans between the age of 25 and 65 who don't have a college degree, who don't have manufacturing jobs to go to anymore. We had 20 million manufacturing jobs when Ronald Reagan was president. We're down to 11 million. If you look at that line, it's going straight down. If we don't allow our country to be competitive with the rest of the world, we're going to continue to see that decline, and there really is no hope for the folks who are struggling the most. That's why I put our campaign square on. We are going to make manufacturing competitive. We're going to put out a flat tax that'll have a transition period for manufacturing. We'll start out at a 0 rate. We'll go back to everybody else's rate. We want to incentivize that money to come into this country. We want to have repatriation to cut it to 5%, again, to bring that money here so we can invest in capital equipment, expensing instead of depreciation, again, to incentivize manufacturing.
Flat tax for individuals?
For everybody.
What percentage?
20%.
Rand Paul's proposed 14.5.
Well, yeah, he also has a VAT tax, but I don't. I have a income tax, a corporate tax, all 20%.
Speaking of the economy, in New Hampshire, if someone maxes out on public assistance, experts tell me that's about $14 an hour someone if they max out on public assistance, and they may well need that. Massachusetts, south of the border, maybe $20. How do you incentivize Americans who are on public assistance to go back to work?
Well, you're talking to the guy who led the welfare reform charge. I drafted the bill when I was in the House. 1996, I managed the bill on the floor of the Senate. We wanted to do two things in welfare, and we worked with the governors to get that done. We put time limits, and we put a work requirement. We did a great job. We eliminated the only federal entitlement program that's ever been eliminated. We did that. I did that. I was the leader of that. And we should have done it for SNAP. We should have done it for the other means-tested entitlement programs. We didn't. Next door here, Governor LePage has done that and seen a dramatic result of that, of reduction in benefits. But it has to be a 1-2 punch. We've got to create jobs. We've got to create jobs for these folks who want to work but just don't have good enough paying jobs with benefits to motivate them to get off of these welfare programs. So it's a combination of manufacturing and putting time limits and work requirements on welfare.
Do you believe this president and this administration truly want real border security?
I don't think this administration is serious about border security or serious about protecting working men and women. In the last 20 years, 35 million people have come into this country legally and illegally. Now, that can be a good thing or a bad thing. But the reality is wages for those workers I've been talking about have been flatlined for 20 years. We have never seen such decrepit wage growth. And who are the 90% of the people who are coming in legally and illegally? Almost all unskilled workers. To compete against our hardworking men and women who want a chance to succeed, but we're not giving it to them. I'm the only person in this race that has called for not just securing the border, following up on the visas, imposing E-Verify, but calling for a 25% reduction in the unskilled labor that's coming into this country. It is a serious problem. Everyone else is dancing around it. I'm going to stand for the American worker.
Briefly, Senator, how should we deal with employers who hire illegal immigrants or aliens?
E-Verify has to be universal, and employees, both current and future employees, have to comply with it.
You run before? You glad you made the decision to do it again?
It's been it was a tremendous opportunity last time around. This time around, it's actually better because last time everyone was trying to say we were more conservative than Mitt Romney. This time you're actually talking about issues and how we're going to help this country, and that's a good thing.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks.
Governor John Kasich has served as governor of Ohio since 2011.
Governor, what would you do with the so-called sanctuary cities? In San Francisco, we saw that god-awful murder of that beautiful young